Go to any book of narrations. Mughira bin Shu'bah, Ziyad bin Abih, Kufa, Basra, Khutbah of Salat al-Jum'ah, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, may God curse Ali ibn Abi Talib. Because you know Ali ibn Abi Talib is seen by many schools as the fourth caliph. I ask you to go and see when he became the fourth rightly guided caliph. You think it became straight away? Ahmad ibn Hanbal, if it wasn't for him, holy prophets. But Umar ibn al-Khattab believed it's something which is a good innovation. Just because a brother of mine in another school in Islam has that innovation which is there, then you find that it's not a cause for disagreement. It's a cause for bringing the jurisprudence together. The next area, which will conclude for us, Karbala and Messianism. The Syiah, many people see them straight away and say, the people of self-flagellation. True? How many of you see the images? Blood everywhere. And it's understandable if there are a group of Muslims who come out there and say, look at these barbaric animals who are self-flagellating themselves and coming forward and hurting themselves and putting pain on themselves. First and foremost, it's ironic, those who come forward and attack the Shia for their love of Hussein, considering I think we can go Muharram after Muharram with many of those who claim to love the grandson of the Prophet, not listening to one lecture on his life the whole year. And I'm certain of that. In Syria, the Mufti of Syria, who's a friend of mine, who's someone I had lectured for within Syria, and I've been to that area, himself gives a khutbah where he says, why have they not told us what happened at Karbala for years? What do you think on the Friday prayer in Saudi Arabia on the 10th of Muharram? They're going to talk about what happened to the grandson of Muhammad. They're going to talk about fasting on Ashura, how the Prophet learned from the Jews how to fast, and how the Prophet said, I've got a greater right than Moses has. Let's fast on Ashura. How ironic. The grandson of Muhammad dies on the 10th of Muharram, and Muhammad's own followers find it hard to remember him. Because of what? Because of self-flagellation? Forget those who self-flagellate. Ask yourself that when the Prophet tells me about Hussein, and I go every year without listening to a single lecture on his life, am I really honoring the grandson of the Prophet Muhammad? So how about those who self-flagellate themselves? It's not part of Shia doctrine. It's a cultural act. Does culture have a place within Islam? Yes. Unless culture breaks law. What do I mean? When the Prophet came to Arabia, there was some Arabian culture he didn't even change. Arabs for 4 months in the year wouldn't fight each other. Muharram, Rajab, Dhul Qa'dah, Dhul Hijjah. True? He saw no need to change that. You should keep those 4 months and there should be no war. Then there were other things in Arabian culture which were seen as being bad. For example, burying your daughters alive. That was not allowed. When you honor Hussein, the Shia who honor Hussein, number one, normally do it, I'm sure many of you have seen. Normally there are 10 lectures in that first 10 nights. Do you agree? I'm sure some of you may have come across, most mosques have 10 lectures in those first 10 nights. Is that allowed? Of course it is. Any lecture which reminds you of the Holy Prophet's family is allowed in Islam. There's not a single Muslim who denies that. Number two, some of them come forward and beat their chests. Is that allowed? Where does it stem from? Some say it stems from the granddaughter of Muhammad by the name of Zainab, who slaps herself viciously when she hears the news of her brother's martyrdom. Others say no, it's a cultural act. You'll see them walking and going like this. When they go like this, there are extremes to it. There are some who rip off their shirts and go out publicly and do it. Is that what the scholars tell them? No. In every school in Islam, there are certain bands whose culture outweighs their religion. And however much you'll try and tell them that there are certain actions which are going a bit extreme, they won't listen to you. There are some who use chains and hurt their backs. There are some, how many of you have seen the following sight of getting a sword and striking your head? The scholars come forward and state, you are harming yourself, it is haram. But unfortunately, what the scholars state sometimes goes in one ear, out of the other. And that if you now come and tell someone that you are flagellating and it's wrong, they will not listen. But the basis of the message which the majority of the Shiites follow is the message of understanding Hussein and the messianic role, because Hussein was martyred in Karbala. And his martyrdom, according to the Shiites, will be avenged by the Mahdi. The Mahdi being the Imam of the Shiites, the 12th, who went into occultation. Someone will say, occultation, I read one book, very much related to misconceptions about Shia, which says they believe he was in some cellar underground, then he escaped. What happened to Jesus? Ilyas, where is he? Where's Idris? Oh, they're in occultation. Oh, so it's all right to believe in the occultation that easily. What happened to Muhammad on the night of Hijrah? He leaves his house. How? God doesn't let them see him. Go put that in an academic argument, see what happens. He leaves his house without God letting anyone see him, so that he can go from Mecca to Medina. No, no, academic arguments, we don't care about academia. We're religious Muslims and we believe in what... Well, if you find it easy to believe God can make this for Muhammad, why can't he make it for the son of Muhammad? If the son of Muhammad, Muhammad himself has prophecies, Mahdi this, Mahdi that, Mahdi this, Mahdi that. At the end of time, there will be the savior. There's not a single Muslim who doesn't believe in the Mahdi. And I don't know, any of you have come across the arrivals on YouTube recently. And you'll see this whole idea of the Antichrist versus the Mahdi. The Shiites are of the opinion that Mahdi was born. Our brothers in other schools are of the opinion, no, he's to be born. And he will bring justice. No problem. It's a dialogue on an academic level. It can be discussed through narrations. But for some people to come and say it's barbaric or it's stupid for people to believe in occultation, let's not go too far into where Jesus is. So anyway, so here on this narration, we find Messianism, Shia, Mahdi. Some Shia, very stagnant. Mahdi, you know what, we'll try and work for the man. But let him just come in his own time. Others, no. We have to be practical. We've got to work to create a system of justice where Mahdi is able to return. But the main point is that the vision is Mahdi avenges Karbala. Muhammad's grandson is killed. Mahdi comes back to avenge the injustice of that act. And that's why the final area, the future of intra-faith dialogue. We're very good at interfaith, but we seem to have no intra-faith. In our mosques, Shias don't go to Sunni mosques. Sunnis don't go to Shia mosques. Even though a mosque is the house of Allah, it should not be a Sunni or a Shia place. It's the house of God. Anybody should be welcome. Sometimes our problem is our own problem. Our speakers, both Shia and Sunni, can be condescending, can be rude, can be abusive. They are the ones who make each other run away from one another. They don't allow for unity, rather they call for disunity. Whereas the Quran in chapter 3, verse 103, tells us, beware and hold on to the rope of God and do not disunite. This verse was revealed about the Aus and the Khazraj in Medina. The Aus and the Khazraj used to hate each other. Mus'ab bin Umair, may Allah bless his soul, brought them both back together. When he brought them back together, the narration is there which states that one day when the Prophet was in Medina, the Aus, their head was sitting and the Khazraj was sitting. And watch how it relates to the way Sunnis and Shias live their life today. The head of the Aus was sitting down. He said to the head of the Khazraj, you know what? Sa'ad ibn Mu'adh is from us. Head of the Khazraj said, so what? Mu'adh ibn Jabal is from us. Then the head of the Aus said, Khuzaymah bin Thabit is from us. And then the other one replied, Zayd ibn Thabit is from us. Before you knew it, they started a punch-up with each other. These guys were on top of each other. Why? They were trying to narrate, we have him, you have him. We have him, we... The Holy Prophet came and said, before you used to fight each other, now Islam has come. As a blessing, do not disunite. Don't say, we have him and you have him. Say, we have the religion of Islam. And that we seek to work together in dialogue with one another. Recently in Amman, there was an agreement for all the different schools in Islam to come together in dialogue. And that this agreement was headed by the king in Jordan, who invited scholars from all the different schools to try and come together in peace. And without unity, this religion will never move forward. When I say unity, it doesn't mean you compromise your beliefs. It means you're willing to discuss them with respect and not with hatred. You're willing to discuss them with references, and you're willing to come to the conclusion that if this is the right way, may God guide us. And if it's not, let us continue to look for guidance. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. Question here. What is the status of Aisha radiallahu anha in Shia Islam? Is it permissible to slander her or any of the companions in Shia Islam? Well, without a shadow of doubt, as the wife of the Prophet, she occupies a position as the mother of the believers in the Quran. But within the Shia school, she is not seen very highly at all. The reason she is not seen highly at all is because of her actions against the fourth Khalifa, or the successor of the Prophet. Not only against the successor, who I will come to in a second, but also because of the verses in the Quran, which themselves discuss her and Hafsa's actions in Surah 66, verse 1, verse 3, verse 4. All of them discuss how Aisha and Hafsa, the way they, number one, made fun of Rasulullah's breath when he used to go to his wife Zainab, because she used to drink, he used to drink a drink from her made from honey. Imam al-Bukhari narrates that when he'd come back, the two of them would come forward and state what? The two of them would come forward and say that your breath doesn't smell nice. He stopped drinking the drink until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed Surah 66, verse number 1. Verse 3 and 4 of Surah Al-Tahrim and 5. When verse 5, God says, if they do not repent, then we will give you better wives. We will happily divorce them and give you better wives. The narration is about when they divulge the secret. There is not a single book of tafsir which disagrees with what I have just said. You can go and read every book of tafsir which will mention the two of them and their actions. That was in the time of the Prophet. After the Prophet dies, she, according to the Shiite school, leads the army against Ali ibn Abi Talib, and not only leads the army against Ali ibn Abi Talib, according to the Shiite school, is the cause of the deaths of thousands of companions. Ali ibn Abi Talib forgives her for her action, and after he passes away, she continues to have a difference of opinion with his son Hassan. Therefore, she is not seen highly within the school of the Shia. Of course, that's the opinion of the scholars. In terms of slandering, Quran says in Surah 6, verse 108, وَلَا تَسُبُّوا الَّذِينَ يَدْعُونَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ فَيَسُبُّ اللَّهَ عَدْوًا بِغَيْرِ عِلْمٍ. Do not abuse the idols of the idol worshippers, otherwise they'll turn around and abuse your Lord. If you can't abuse the idol of the idol worshippers, how then can you abuse a lady who lived with Rasulullah? Therefore, the Quran is adamant in Surah 6, verse 108, as a conclusion that it is not allowed in the school of the Shia, and it is forbidden to slander Aisha. Thank you very much. Question here, how are the 12 Imams determined? Different narrations state that the Holy Prophet announces that there will be 12 Imams after me. If on the first level I put forward the argument that after the Holy Prophet, of the 12 Imams of the Shia, the first 11 are the most knowledgeable men in each generation in which they lived. And that argument can be backed up by any narration. Ali Zayn al-Abidin, Muhammad al-Baqir, Ja'far al-Sadiq, Musa ibn Ja'far, Ali ibn Musa, Muhammad ibn Ali. All I ask you to do, forget that there are 12. After the Prophet Muhammad dies, and the 300 years after him, with each of those 11, find if you could see a scholar more knowledgeable than them living in their time. The top scholars attest that each of the Imams of Ahl al-Bayt, living in each time, is the most knowledgeable of scholars. Abu Hanifa has the famous line, لولا السنتان لهلك النعمان. If it wasn't for my 2 years with Ja'far al-Sadiq, I would have been perished. Umar bin Abdul Aziz and the scholars who lived in his time would say, because there is a narration which says, Umar bin Abdul Aziz used to receive inspiration, ilham. And the reply that came was what? The reply that came was, Umar bin Abdul Aziz said, if you think I receive inspiration, then what does Zayn al-Abidin receive with all his knowledge?